Causes of the Civil War by Eliot Bell and Wesley Sutton. Uncle Tom's Cabin, written by Harry Beecher Stowe, pushed the North farther into anti-slavery. It gave a realistic perspective of how poorly slaves are treated. It is said that Abraham Lincoln met with her and said, "So you're the little woman who wrote the book that started this great war." Although some debate that it happened, it still shows how strongly Uncle Tom's Cabin influenced the war. Compromise of 1850. With the Compromise of 1850, both the North and the South gained things they wanted. The North got California as a free state, got Texas lost the land dispute with New Mexico, a free state, and the slave trade was then prohibited in Washington, D.C. Because of this, the South also got things that they wanted. This included Texas getting $10 million due to the land dispute, the fugitive slave law, and no slavery restrictions in Utah and New Mexico. Dred Scott case. The Dred Scott case was a slave who was suing his owner since he had moved through a free state, meaning he was free and unrightfully enslaved when he was brought back into a slave state. This case went all the way up into the Supreme Court and eventually was ruled that a slave could not sue because he was a slave. Nullification crisis. In 1828, Congress passed an extremely high tariff which supported the North but not the South. Because of this, South Carolina decided to nullify the law, making it so that the tariff did not apply to South Carolina. Andrew Jackson, the current president, attempted to gain permission to use federal troops to enforce the tariff. Instead, Congress formed a compromise bill to please both sides. Missouri Compromise. In 1819, Missouri petitioned to join the U.S. as a slave state. This would upset the balance of the states within Congress, which was currently 11 on both sides. After much arguing, Henry Clay came up with a solution known as the Missouri Compromise. With the compromise, Missouri would enter as a slave state and Maine would enter as a free state. Along with this, any state above Missouri's southern border would enter as a free state, and any below would be a slave state. Kansas-Nebraska Act. 30 years after the Missouri Compromise, there was a standstill about Nebraska. The South would not let it become a territory since slavery would be illegal. To compensate, Senator Stephen A. Douglas proposed the Kansas-Nebraska Act. This allowed Kansas and Nebraska could come into the United States and that they would decide whether or not to have slavery by popular sovereignty. Of course, Kansas was above the line for the Missouri Compromise, meaning that it would have to be revoked. This bill split the Whig Party, with the Southern Whigs being Democrats and the Northern Whigs forming the Republicans. Election of 1860. The election of 1860 had 3 candidates, and despite not getting a single vote from the South, Abraham Lincoln won. This was the breaking point for the South, as South Carolina seceded soon afterward. President Abraham Lincoln would continue on to force the South to stay. Secession. After the election of Abraham Lincoln, South Carolina was the first to secede, with Georgia, Florida, Alabama, Mississippi, Texas, and Louisiana. Later, Virginia, Arkansas, North Carolina, and Tennessee left as well. Seceding is when a state or section of country leave their current country and form their own country. Abraham Lincoln was afraid that the other states would think they could secede as well, so he knew he could not let them, which directly led to the war. The end. The war starts, and the Union and the Confederate States of America are thrown into a violent turnaround.